Okay, today we're going to look at just the very end of Prayer Before Birth. It's a really long poem, but there's tons that you can say about it. So find it in your blue anthology and it's on page 56. We're just going to look at the last two stanzas. So the stanza that begins on line 28 to start with. I am not yet born, oh fill me with strength against those who would freeze my humanity, would dragoon me into a lethal automaton, would make me a cog in a machine, a thing with a face, a thing, and against all those who would dissipate my entirety, would blow me like thistledown hither and thither, or hither and thither, like water held in the hands would spill me. Let them not make me a stone, and let them not spill me, otherwise kill me. Now, the first thing I think I'd pick out about this is on line 28, that phrase, I am not yet born. Now, actually, all the stanzas up until that point begin with that clause, I am not yet born. And that repetition, I think, really is one of the key things in the poem, okay, because it really emphasises this idea that there's still hope, there's still potential. First of all, the narrative perspective of the whole poem is really interesting and really unusual, isn't it? Because you're hearing from the point of view, from the perspective of an unborn child. Now, well, how is that possible? Because they don't normally have a voice, do they? They can't speak, okay? And so what Louis MacNeice is choosing to do here is giving a voice to someone who normally doesn't have a voice, okay? And I think that's really powerful, isn't it? He's giving a voice to someone who can't speak, can't express their opinions, normally has no power because they're silent, yeah? So that idea of giving a voice to the voiceless through using such an unusual narrative perspective is the one thing that you can say. But also there's this idea, I'm not yet born, I'm not yet born, I'm not yet born, I'm not yet born. How do you read that? How do you interpret that? Is it this sense of there's still hope, there's still potential, you can still do this, you can still make a difference to my life? Yeah, is that what it means? This idea of focusing on the fact that there is still hope, there is still potential? Or is it to do with emphasising this idea, I'm not yet born, I don't even exist yet, and when I do exist, I'm going to be this tiny little fragile baby in your hands. I am completely vulnerable, I'm completely dependent, completely in your hands. It's up to you what you make of my life, whether you nurture me, and you provide me with a safe, positive environment to grow and to thrive in, or whether you gradually destroy me and strip me of my humanity. And that places a lot of responsibility on the reader. Now, who's the reader? You know, who is the narrator talking to here? Is it the parent, the mother or the father of this child? Or is it wider than that? Is it to people, to the human race generally? Because maybe it's not just as parents, but all of us share our responsibility for nurturing and caring and protecting a child that's coming into this world. Yeah? Go back to line 28. So it says, I'm not yet born, oh fill me. That oh fill me, we had another example of that on line 25, which says, I'm not yet born, oh hear me. That oh, there's a rhetorical device there, okay, a bit of linguistic terminology that you could use. And it's a bit weird because it's called apostrophe. Now, normally you think of apostrophe as being something that you use to show possession, don't you? Like a punctuation mark, or to show that there are letters missing, okay? It's the same word, okay, but you can use it in another way, okay? It's another term for a rhetorical device or a rhetorical technique, like a persuasive technique, if you like. And you can say that a writer is using apostrophe when they're addressing someone who is absent, or they're addressing perhaps like a personified concept. So for instance, if they were saying, oh love, why do you tear my heart in two? Do you know what I mean? Talking to love as if it's a person, that would be apostrophe, that use of that oh, and then addressing someone like that. Or in Romeo and Juliet, for instance, when Juliet says, oh Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? That oh is apostrophe then. I know Romeo is actually present because he's lurking there, but she doesn't think that he is, okay? So apostrophe is addressing someone who's absent. And here, if you look at it, I am not yet born, oh fill me. What the child, the unborn child, is doing it's maybe talking to the parent or to the people, to the humanity, to the human race, and that they've not yet met. Yeah. So there's this sense that, you know, the people who are going to have the fate of this unborn child in their hands, they haven't even met them yet. So it kind of like, it sort of shows again the vulnerability of the child whose fate is in the hands of people who they haven't yet actually had any sort of contact with. Yeah? Let's move on to a few more things in this stanza. There are a few metaphors. So it says, with strength, fill me with strength against those who would freeze my humanity, would dragoon me. That means to force someone, to coerce someone. It's a military term, so sometimes it's used like to force someone to enlist, to join the army. Would dragoon me into a lethal automaton, like a machine, like a robot. Okay, so there are going to be military leaders, there are going to be governments, there are going to be politicians, there are going to be people who are going to want to turn me into some kind of just robotic soldier that will do whatever they want me to do. Don't let that happen, is what he's saying. There are going to be people who are going to want to make me a cog in a machine. There's the metaphor. Yeah, they're going to be turned into a cog in a machine. And that metaphor is to do with that process of dehumanization. I'm not going to be like a person, okay? I'm just going to be something, some object fulfilling the commands and the demands of someone else. You know, someone obeying someone else's orders in an army or whatever. A thing with a face, a thing. Look at that repetition of the thing. It's all to do with dehumanization, isn't it? And against all those who would dissipate my entirety. People are going to want to dissipate. As actually, it's a really interesting word because it kind of has two meanings. It means for something to disappear, okay, to make something disappear. It can also mean to waste away. So I think what the poet's talking about here is he's saying, you know, that the speaker, the unborn child, is at risk of just disappearing, just frittering away into nothing, okay? And maybe the sense of being wasted. Yeah, they're this little human life with all this hope and potential, all the things that they could do and they could be and they could say and they could achieve. What's going to happen? They're just going to disappear. Their humanity is just gradually going to be eroded. Their sense of self, their entirety, is gradually going to be stripped away until there's really nothing left of them as an individual. They're just doing what everyone else tells them to do. And you know, this idea that my life and my potential will have been wasted. I think that they're the two senses that you get from this idea of would dissipate my entirety. My true self being gradually eroded and chipped away and stripped away until there's nothing left of me, and this idea of me being wasted as a person, as an individual. And then we've got a couple of similes then. It says, would blow me like thistledown hither or thither and thither, like water held in the hands would spill me. So this idea of being like thistledown, like little seeds floating on the wind, or like water that could sort of slip through your hands, something insubstantial and fragile and vulnerable. And I think what it's suggesting there is this kind of using those similes, that the like thistledown and like water slipping through your hands, to kind of emphasize the fragility and the vulnerability of human life. You've got this precious little human baby in your hands, and it's so vulnerable, it's so fragile. What are you going to do with it? You're going to nurture it and protect it from all the evil in the world and all the things that are going to strip it of its potential and its humanity. Or is it just going to become like any other human? And then finally, in the last couple of lines, that really short little stanza at the end, it says, let them not make me a stone, and let them not spill me. We've got another metaphor there, haven't we, to do with being made a stone, being hardened. As human beings, we're not meant to be hard. Yeah, we're meant to be soft and fragile, but also creative and expressive and loving. But what life does to us sometimes is it hardens us, I think is what the poet's saying. And ultimately, the baby, the unborn child that's speaking to us in this poem, leaves us with quite a bleak message, that if as adults, if as parents, we can't nurture and protect a child coming into this world, well, I'd rather you just kill me. Just kill me now. I don't even want to enter it. It's quite a bleak, well, it's a very bleak ending to the poem, isn't it? But one of the things I think you need to think is that he was writing in 1944, so just near the end of the Second World War. Think of, you know, if you were living at that time, how you would view the world. You know, think of the destruction that you would have witnessed and heard about in cities, you know, and in countries across the world. Think of the death, think of the evil, think of everything that you would have witnessed and experienced over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And then think, how would you feel about bringing a child into the world? Now, if I was writing about this, actually, just really briefly, one of the things I would talk about is, well, how do you feel about bringing a child into the world now? Like, okay, this was written in 1944, but now in 2023, how do you feel about that? You know, think about everything around you. Think about the climate crisis. You know, think about the war between Ukraine and Russia. Think about, you know, all the other kind of sort of things that are happening in the world that make life so difficult for so many people. And think, do I want to bring a child into the world? You know, is that fair on the child? Now, you know, I don't know what your answer to that is, but can you see how, in a way, maybe this poem, yes, it was written, what, kind of 80 odd years ago or whatever, but can you see how you could show that you can relate to that now? And I think that, just for a sentence, I think that will be a valid thing to do, to give that kind of personal response and say how you feel about that. Hope you found that useful. If you did, then please like it and share it and subscribe to English Gorillas.